saw the kingdom through many, many changes. His son, Liholiho, Kamehameha II, presided over the abolition of the kapu, or traditional Hawaiian laws. To ensure the sovereignty of the kingdom in the face of the increasing influence of the resident foreigners, the third King Kamehameha established a constitutional monarchy. He also put new laws in place in an effort to protect his people's land and civil rights. Kamehameha IV, feeling increasing economic pressures from the growing American interests, tried to align the kingdom with the British, both in trade and in royal lifestyle. The dynasty's fifth king, Lot Kamehameha, strengthened his constitutional powers as the foreign population continued to increase. One of only a few possible successors to the Kamehameha throne, Prince Lunalilo became the kingdom's first elected monarch. The increasing pressure to give Pearl Harbor to the United States for its exclusive use in exchange for American concessions to the sugar industry and the growing scourge of leprosy were two of the great problems he faced during his short reign. High Chief David La'amea Kalakaua became Hawaii's second elected king on February 12, 1874. Fluent in English and Hawaiian, he came to the throne well prepared to rule. He had been educated at the Royal School with several of Hawaii's future kings and queens and had already held a number of political offices and other important positions in the kingdom's government. King Kalakaua came to power during turbulent times and had a difficult and controversial reign as American business and trade increased. In 1874, he traveled to Washington, D.C. to discuss Hawaii's economic interests with President Grant. In doing so, he became the first monarch of any country to visit the United States. 8 months later, Grant signed a treaty with Hawaii, which was designed to protect American sugar interests and ensure that the islands remained independent and economically healthy. In 1881, he became the first reigning monarch to travel around the world. He met with Asian leaders to discuss treaties and immigration. From Asia, he went on to Europe and to Great Britain, where he met with Queen Victoria. At the end of his 10-month world tour, the kingdom celebrated their king's return. Iolani Palace had its roots in the king's noble vision for his nation. Concerned about the threats to the kingdom's sovereignty, he built the palace to send a message to the world that Hawaiians were a proud people, that their monarchs were in power, that Hawaii was independent. Most of all, the king wanted to raise the self-esteem of his people, who were declining in number. The old Iolani Palace had stood at the center of Hawaii's political and social life for decades. Built on these same grounds, the new Iolani Palace was to become a new symbol of hope, a center where Hawaiian culture, however threatened, still lived. The king took an active part in its construction and design, a design style that has been called American Florentine. It took 3 years and 3 architects and almost $360,000 to complete. Much of the building material was imported from the mainland. From Pennsylvania, slate for the roof. From San Francisco, the columns for the veranda and etched glass. From the Pacific Northwest, cedar to complement the native koa and kamani woods for the interiors. The king installed some of the latest marvels of the day and created a showcase of technology. Full modern bathrooms with lavish plumbing were a great luxury in that day. After seeing a display of electric lights in Paris and meeting Thomas Edison, he ordered the palace's gas chandeliers converted to electricity. With the new palace, King Kalakaua also brought new style to the monarchy. In the Blue Room, small receptions, casual gatherings, and formal evenings of music were held. In the state dining room, guests dined on French china with crystal from Bohemia and silver from England, France, China, and the United States. The king's chair was often placed at the center, so he could converse easily with his guests. In the throne room, King Kalakaua and Queen Lili'uokalani welcomed people from his kingdom and visitors from abroad. Formal balls filled the palace with lively music, played by the Royal Hawaiian Band. The festivities sometimes lasted until the wee hours of the morning. The private quarters of the royal family were on the second floor of the palace. The Queen's own bedroom, with 2 adjoining guest rooms, occupied one side of the building. Across the hall was the King's suite of rooms, which he personally furnished with family mementos and curios from all over the world. Next door to his bedroom was his library. It was equipped with a recent invention, the telephone, which allowed him to call his Chamberlain's office in the basement. From here, the king ran the affairs of the kingdom. The Gold Room, or music room at the front of the building, was intended for private musical evenings. The palace grounds were the scene of charitable fundraisers, luau's, and other events. A pavilion was built for the king's coronation ceremony, which took place February 12, 1883, on the 9th anniversary of his accession. The formal investiture mixed ancient Hawaiian and modern European pageantry. The king and queen each wore a jeweled crown designed for the occasion in Europe. King Kalakaua's deep passion for his culture fueled a Hawaiian renaissance. He was a talented musician who composed many Hawaiian songs. The words to Hawaii Pono'i, which he wrote, were set to music by Maestro Henry Berger of the Royal Hawaiian Band and became the Hawaiian national anthem. Celebrations such as the King's Jubilee brought the hula, Hawaiian music, and other traditions back to life. In 1887, towards the end of Kalakaua's reign, he was beset by local businessmen who forced on him a constitution which stripped him of much of his power. In November of 1890, the king boarded the USS Charleston and left for California, where he hoped to restore his failing health. Quite unexpectedly, he died in San Francisco on January 20th, 1891. There was no telegraph cable or radio at that time, so the Queen and the people of Honolulu were unaware of his passing until the USS Charleston was spotted rounding Diamond Head, draped in black, its American and Hawaiian flags flying at half-staff. The king was making his last voyage home. His sister, Lili'uokalani, succeeded him January 29, 1891. She was prepared to serve. On 2 occasions, she had carried out the duties of regent while the king was traveling. She had also traveled to London with Queen Kapi'olani to attend the Centennial Jubilee for Queen Victoria in 1887. She believed her mandate was to win back the powers which had been taken from her brother in 1887 by the infamous Bayonet Constitution. Fiercely determined to restore power to the crown and to her people, she announced to her cabinet ministers that it was her royal right to draw up a new constitution, and she had done so. She told them to sign it. Her timid advisors refused because they feared an uprising. A group of Honolulu businessmen, led by Sanford B. Dole and Lauren A. Thurston, exploited the Queen's lack of backing. With support from the United States personnel stationed in the islands at that time, they overthrew the Hawaiian monarchy on January 17, 1893. The kingdom was destroyed, the Hawaiian people put down. Despite President Cleveland's subsequent denouncement of the overthrow of the kingdom and his efforts to restore the Queen to power, the Provisional Government declared Hawaii an independent republic on July 4, 1894. 1 year later, the Republic of Hawaii defended itself against a counter-revolution. Organized by Robert Wilcox, a part Hawaiian, it failed to restore the Queen to power. Although she proclaimed her innocence of any knowledge of the rebellion, she was arrested and brought to trial by a military court in her former throne room. She was found guilty and received the maximum sentence of $5,000 fine and 5 years of hard labor. Even though she did not have to do hard labor, she was humiliated by confinement in an almost bare room on the palace's second floor. From this imprisonment room, she wrote the Queen's Prayer, a song of sorrow and anguish, a song expressing her trust in her Christian God and her forgiveness for her jailers. After her release 8 months later, she continued her fight to halt the annexation of Hawaii as a territory of the United States. But her cause was doomed. The golden days of Iolani Palace came to an end. As soon as they came to power, the new government began to disperse the trappings of royalty. They auctioned off the furnishings and converted the once elegant palace to utilitarian offices. 5 years after the overthrow, the United States annexed the islands, and Hawaii became a territory of the United States. The palace became the capital for the new territory of Hawaii, and in 1959, Hawaii's state capital. Over the years, to meet the growing need for space, new areas were added which changed the character of the building. When the government moved to the new capital nearly 10 years after statehood, the preservation and restoration of this priceless landmark began. Since 1969, it has been an ongoing project directed by the Friends of Iolani Palace, a community-based nonprofit group. With support from the state legislature and private donors, millions of dollars have been spent to restore the building and refurnish its rooms, to return the palace to the dignity of the Kalakaua dynasty. Iolani Palace, a king's noble vision awaits you.